Uh, uh, Sylvio, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. Shall we start?
Sure.
Okay. Yeah. Good afternoon and good morning to all. We welcome you to the 10th lecture in the Teaknet webinar series. Today, we are fortunate to have Mr. Sylvio Coutinho amongst us to deliver the lecture on best practices in sustainable teak plantation management. Mr. Sylvio is the managing partner or CEO of the Teak Resources Company, one of the world's leading teak plantation companies with their corporate office in Singapore. They have their largest teak plantation spanning about 80,000 hectares in Mato Grosso, Brazil, and most of their plantations are FSC certified. Mr. Sylvio, a graduate in business management, is presently working in the forestry industry and commercial operations of the company since 2002. Over to you, Sylvio, for the lecture.
Thank you very much for the introduction and for the invitation. So thank you to all the Teaknet team, and it's a good opportunity. Very happy to be here. So I have prepared a quick 16-slide presentation, and also a good way to start is maybe showing a 5-minute video of our company, which also summarizes our operations. So I will share with you my screen and also share the video that we have, which will give a good overview of how the operations are organized. So please let me know, are you seeing my screen? Can someone just...
Yeah, it's visible. Please go on.
Okay.
Teak Resources Company, TRC, is the largest private producer and seller of sustainable plantation teak wood globally. With over 20 years of business experience, TRC manages the full value chain, including seedling production, soil preparation, planting, forestry management over the full growing cycle, harvesting, processing, sales, and logistics. Our business model is to convert degraded pasture land in the tropical regions of Brazil into highly productive plantations of teak, one of the most valued tropical hardwoods. We believe that in this way, we increase the supply of sustainably produced timber, reduce the forces driving the logging of native forests while sequestering carbon and generating employment and income in the regions where we operate. Sustainability has been a key value of TRC since its beginning, with over 45 million teak trees planted, resulting in the sequestration of more than 6 million tons of CO2. Forests under the company's management have maintained certification from the Forest Stewardship Council, FSC, for over 20 years, guaranteeing that the timber is grown under the highest standards of responsible forestry management. TRC manages over 40,000 hectares of planted teak trees on over 100,000 hectares of land in farms in the Brazilian states of Pará and Mato Grosso, where it also operates a sawmill. Its corporate office is in the state of Sao Paulo, and it has a sales office in Singapore. In all, TRC employs over 800 people, from a wide variety of backgrounds and areas of expertise. The development of the best genetic material, identification of the best planting sites, and best practice forestry management operations, including pruning and thinning in ideal intensity and frequency, contribute to the production of timber with great uniformity of shape and quality, high mechanical resistance, and final product yields. The significant scale of the plantations under TRC's management provide for a stable and continuous supply of timber year-round. The company's measurement and classification system for logs and sawn products guarantees that the timber is delivered consistently to the contracted specifications. We serve the most demanding clients on all continents, and our products are well received and recognized for their quality. TRC's teak is used widely in the furniture and furnishings industries, with a focus on design and decor items, as well as in the construction and flooring industries, demonstrating the high value the market places on the elegance and durability inherent in our teak wood. As the largest company in this industry, TRC has positioned itself as the global reference in teak plantation timber. Our goal is to make certified plantation teak the preferred tropical hardwood, providing superior value and returns to our partners and clients, and generating significant economic and social value in the areas where we operate. Teak Resources Company. Excellence in sustainable teak wood.
So, just 1 second. So this video is also present in our website. So if anyone has missed, we can watch it again, and it provides a good introduction of the company. So now I'll go through the presentation. Are you being able to see my screen again?
Yeah, it's visible.
Okay. Okay. So, well, this is just a slide summarizing what the company is. So I won't be repeating what was shown in the video, but in summary, the company started its operations in '94. So it's over almost 30 years of experience planting and managing and selling teak in Brazil, with the certification of the FSC since '98, which has been a very important step from us, and we have maintained certification since then. We've produced last year over 150,000 cubic meters of logs from the areas, and we're projecting 250,000 cubic meters for next year. All operations are divided in Pará and Mato Grosso state, and we have 800 direct employees. You know, the teak genetic research and development has been a very important part of the company since early 2000s, when we started the program. We have our own sales operation in Asia, and all the carbon and strong ESG governance that teaks provide. And the ESG governance we have in the company has been a very important part for us. So I think it's also important to just share this chart here on the right side, this pizza chart that shows, you know, Latin America has turned itself, I think, to the main supplying area to Asia in the teak supplying area over the last 15 years, maybe, followed by Africa. And this is how the share of each country is. So we are only focused and operating out of Brazil, and Brazil has 31% of the planted area of teak planted area in Latin America. So I think we are among the top 3 supplying countries of Latin America, just actually the top 2 just after Ecuador. But this should change in the next years, given the volumes that will come out of Brazil. So our agenda today is just to go through what we consider the key steps for a successful plantation management. So we start talking about the first part of the process, which is having good seeds and good genetic material, so you can start the plantation. followed by how to select areas that you can implement the plantation. And then we go through the management processes like land preparation, planting itself, how we manage the forest until the whole cycle, until the whole rotation, how we harvest it, how we how we transport the timber, and how we process and how we trade it, which is the final step of this long-term process. Here we've summarized what we believe to be, really the key points. So choosing a suitable site. Teak is very, as you're probably aware, very sensitive to the site which is being planted. So we need deep and well-drained soils with good physical and chemical characteristics. So this is the first step. In our experience, if you don't have adequate soils, you're never going to have a successful plantation. Second is having a good genetic material and a good seedling and a quality seedling. So also, this is a very important part. We've seen throughout the years how genetic and the quality of the seeds in establishing the plantation can make a difference. We've got productivities here that change, the one can be the double of the other, and that makes the whole difference in the productivity and the cost of the project. Weed control at the beginning. Teak is very sensitive to competition. So if you are able to keep the areas clean when just as you planted, this will allow the trees to step up and perform well and have a very early good development. And this is also very important for the end of the rotation. A more intensive pruning until the year 10 and especially, but keeping in mind the leaf area, to not over prune, so there's no leaf area that the tree can develop, and have a very good thinning throughout the rotation, thinning program. As I thought, Teak is very sensitive to competition in our experience, and also competing to itself, not only to the weeds. So if you keep a very high stocking, you are not going to have a good development of diameter, which provides the main driver of value. And most important also is to have an adequate financial source. I mean, we cannot forget this is a long term. In our case, we're looking for 20, 22, 23 years cycle. So if you are not able to have the cash flow to pay up for those costs and do the adequate management, or have a financial pressure, does implicate that you cannot follow the adequate management. So we consider this to be the key plantation features. So I'm going to jump into a more detailed explanation of each one of the steps. So in terms of seedling production and genetic material, we've been investing in this since early 2000s. So it's been almost 20 years when we brought the first imported clones and invested from Malaysia. We invested also in the quality nursery, and also now we have also our own cloning program going on for a while. So this we have brought, there's over 200 different genetic material base in our base that we are trying in the different parts of Brazil and seeing which material can get more adapted better. What we usually look at is I would say three key aspects of the material. One is growth, of course, resistance to diseases, and the timber quality. So taking these three variables into account, this is what you use to the genetic improvement program. Here are some pictures of of rejuvenated microcuttings from superior teak logs that we have in the lab. This is the mini clonal garden technique that, sorry, someone has a noise. Here on the second part is a mini clonal garden where we produce the clones in the mini garden, as we call. This is the mini cutting from the roots. Here the greenhouse where for rooting these cuttings. This is the seedling that is planted in the field. It's very important that we have a good quality seedling, not only the genetic itself, but the seedling has to be a very good quality one. With make sure they have a good rooting, make sure they don't bring diseases in the plants, and so they have a very good early development. So we do have a very strong quality control after the nursery production to make sure that the seedlings that are planted are good. Well, we have a nursery that is able to produce around 600,000 teak seedlings per year, which is more or less what we use in our planting program. Well, second step, after you have a good genetic and a good material and a good seedlings, is selecting the site. As I said, we use different techniques to select the site. First one, of course, we start with areas where there's a minimum logistics that we can in the future export the wood, but looking more to the soil point of view, we look to the natural origin of soils, if it's granodiorite, basalt, tonalite, really try to understand the rocks that has formed those soils. And then also run through a physical and chemical analysis of those soils. We produce heat maps looking to limiting factors, like how shallow that part of the farm could be, or if there's any drainage problem. This can be a big issue for the teak development. We try to eliminate those areas from where we're going to plant, and even before purchasing the land. Here in Brazil, the land is private, so we are allowed to purchase the land. So we do all this due diligence before purchasing to make sure that we're going to have a successful teak in there. So here are some maps that we use in order to try to mitigate those risks. Well, in terms of soil preparation, so once you have the genetics, the seedlings, the land is secured. It's one thing, which is then we go to the soil preparation system. In the soil preparation system, it's very important to mention that all the areas that we're planting teak, they are degraded pasture land. So it's not that we are purchasing forest cover land and converting into teak plantations. So all these areas, they have been farms, cattle farms mostly, for the last 20, 30 years. So the land is pretty degraded with no fertilization. So we need to work a lot on the land to make it better. And this is where we step in. We use different models depending on the soil type. Here, I'll show you a quick video. This is what we call the mounding machine for a soil that needs more drainage, better drainage. So these machines allows to do a little mound. It's a machine that we brought from America. And this helps the early, and on the right side here, you can see how the trees will look like after the soil is prepared. So, making sure that this young seedling that will go to the field will have an adequate soil, so it can have its roots development in the beginning. It's a very important process, especially in this degraded land that has not received any treatment for over 20 years. Another key factor that we look at this part is it's looking for the road system. So at this part, we already start thinking, well, when I'm going to extract the wood, how I'm going to do it, how I'm going to go into the stands and do the pruning and do the fertilization and do the weeding. So how you plan your rows of the spacing of the teak and your rows, it's very, and the access around the stands, so you can move machines all year long, even during the wet period. This is really important in this scale of operations. So we take that into consideration as well. Well, so then once the soil is prepared, we start with the planting process. So we check really the quality of the seeds. Then we have the planting is really manual. We have the workers from our team that plant them, and with this little machine here, and they carry the seeds on the back. And they were very well trained and have a lot of experience with that to make sure that the seedling is planted properly. Otherwise, if it's bending or if there is a planting issue, the early development won't be good. Another key factor here is the window of planting. In our case, in the areas where we're planting, we have 6 to 7 months of rainfall, and then we have a dry period of 5 months usually. So we try to plant in the first 2 months of the rainy season. So at least these young trees can have 4 months of rain. And in our database, this shows also a very good development. So if you plant it late in the season, you have a month of rain maybe. You may have some mortality. They won't have a very good early development. This will make a higher cost of weeding in the future. So we try to plant really at the beginning of the planting season. Right now, we're planting most 5 by 5 spacing, 5 meters by about 5 meters, 7 by 4 meters. We started in the past with 3.2 meters, 3 by 2. So over the years, we're getting more confident with the genetics, more confident with the management. So we were planting less trees per hectares, and now we plant around that. Well, here some pictures and some information how we do this initial management of the plantation. Very important things here that we take into consideration: fertilization, weed control, and pruning. Depending on the soil that you have in your hands, you may add fertilization, maybe yes, maybe not, and different nutrients that you may adjust. This is something we've been studying and working for more than 10 years. And it's shown good results in areas that we managed to understand what was missing. Weed control in the first 3 years is fundamental. As we talked about, teak is very sensitive to competition. So if you have the early seedlings, these young trees covered by grass or covered by any kind of competition, they will get stuck there, they will even die. So we do a manual and a chemical control of weeds. All chemicals that we used are allowed by the FSC certification, so we take that very seriously. Then pruning, keeping the pruning, we usually prune half of the total height of the tree, not more than that, in order to allow the tree also to have a minimum leaf area that keeps it with a good development, and up to 10 meters of height of the commercial trunk that we prune. So after that, we are not pruning anymore. It becomes unviable. And here are some, and the fertilization, and going back to the fertilization program, we put some fertilizer at the planting, and we also put some fertilizer throughout the rotation. Maybe another round or even a third round of fertilization might be needed, depending where on the soils that you have. So here's some pictures of how we do the chemical control, the early pruning on the very young trees, some fertilization being done here. Here's this is the early fertilization. This is a second round of fertilization. This is a pruning more on the second age of let's say 3 to 4 years, 5 years old tree. And this is the older trees, and the mechanical and the chemical weeding here on our left. Well, so once the trees are established, the thinning, it's also another key point for us. How we manage your thinning, how you plan your thinning. We always have to keep in mind when you plant a certain amount of trees per hectare that our goal is the final harvest trees. So the thinning, so you plant more trees just to help the final trees to get there. We look right now to get to 150, 180 trees per hectare at final harvest. And we plant, I don't know, 500, 400 trees per hectare at the beginning. So we know where the final goal is, which is to get here with 18 to 22, maybe 23, depending on each site. But this is where the majority of your cash flow and the payback for your investment will be. So that's what I was saying. It's very important to have a good financial source that can support you through. Sorry, there's some noise in the back. So it's very good to have your financial source that allows you to run through this whole cycle without pressure for over thinning or over harvesting. So we've seen this in a lot of cases, and it's really important that you can manage that if you can. We look to, when we're deciding on when and how to thin, we look always to remove trees with diseases. The smaller and the worst trees, of course, crooked. The suppressed trees is always a selective thinning. We select the worst trees that are going to come out. Eventually, we may do a systematic thinning, which is we may take one line out to allow, depending on your spacing and depending on how your machines, the sizes of your machines are. So you maybe take the 5th line out, and then select the 4th, within the 4 rows, do a selective thinning to help with operations. And we always look for, trees are competing here for space, for water, for light, for nutrients. So we look to different indicators that I'm going to go through, like basal area, and we look through the forestry inventory, and then we decide when to thin and how much trees to take out to maximize the growth of the final crop trees. So this is some elements of how we do this monitoring. So, once the trees are planted, from inception of the plantation, we monitor until the end of the cycle. So we evaluate, all forest qualitative, quantitative variables to understand the growth dynamics that will serve as a base for thinning and harvest. This will guide us to the optimum forest management. And so we have a continuous forestry inventory system, which is basically a systematic grid with these permanent sample plots that we put on all stands. It's one plot for each 10 hectares. They are usually rectangular plots from 315 to 2,000 square meter. They change over the rotation depending on how many trees are in there. As you thin, you need to make it larger. So once we measure, we measure the height, we measure the diameter, we measure the quality aspects. So once we have that data, we bring that data through the system, and we have optimization software that help us to optimize, all the different stands. All management are done on the base of each stand. Each stand are 30 to 50 hectares. They will tell us the harvesting scheduling, taking into account the growth, the prices that we have, the financial returns expected, and also to operational constraints that we can harvest on a continuous manner. So, if the model tells us to cut everything, all the stands in one same year, and then you have no timber in the next year, it's not viable. So we try to put all these constraints in this basket, and the model and our foresters would run different scenarios to present to how to do it, when to cut and how to cut it. So this is a very important part of the decision-making process. Other step is the harvesting in how we do the operations. So we use drones now to fly over the stands and also help us where to plan, where we're going to bring the timber. We do need to have the road maintenance in place. So when I said at the beginning of the plantation, we invest in the road infrastructure, at least some key roads in the farms, so we can move the timber all year long. And just before we know we're going to harvest that area that year, so we invest on maintaining this road so we can move the timber within that year. So that's really important. Otherwise, given the rainfall, you would only be able to operate 4 months a year, which is too short of a window for these scales. So we use mechanized harvesting, feller bunchers and harvesters. We do, of course, throughout the annual budget, we do annual budget with the areas we're going to harvest. We select which stands are going to be harvested in the wet and the dry period because of operational constraints. The machines would put down the logs, then our team would come and measure log by log. We will cut the logs with chainsaws, and then the machines would come and carry again to the outside of the stands, and those logs would go to the port or will be loaded in the farm in containers to be exported or transported to the sawmill. From here, we track each log until the delivery at the final destination. Last step is the trade, right? I mean, so we did all of that for 20 years now. It's time to sell it. In our conditions, and I would say in most of the conditions that we studied where teak is grown, this is a very important part of your cost component, right? I mean, from the farm to the markets. So we have a large scale project. So this enabled us to develop an integrated supply chain. So we deliver the products on a CIF basis to our buyers, right? So here, right now we have 140 buyers in 13 different countries. These at least were our numbers in the last 12 months. So we ship from final harvest logs, thinning logs, squares from the sawmill, lumber from the sawmill. So it's a very fragmented, teak is a very fragmented market. So you have to be a fragmented customer base. So most of the cargo is shipped in containers, and we manage, we keep longer relationship with the truck companies that carry the logs, the container shipping lines, which has been a big challenge for the last months, and looks like it's going to be a big challenge for the next couple of months at least. Railroad, we use railroad because in Brazil most of the plantations are pretty far from the port. port operators. So managing all these contractors and these third parties is also, I must tell you, that is the biggest part of our budget right now, with the volumes that we're moving. So we're spending more money in logistics than in the plantation itself. So but it's something that you have to take into account when you're gonna, sell your lumber and your logs, and understanding your customers, right? Understanding, as we say here, teak, we sell teak from 7 years old to teak from 20 years old, different products, different prices, different customers. So you need to understand what your customer needs and then provide them the right product for it. But it also comes with the idea of, export documentation, trade finance. All this has to be taken into account when you are about to sell your products. And the main markets that we serve are basically sawmillers that are producing lumber for the construction sector, like frames, doors, furniture, flooring and decking manufacturers, and veneer producers. This is, where 90% of this, our teak plantation is going to. Certification, I also talked about. We believed in certification since the inception of the project in 98. We started in 94. We didn't have any timber to sell. In 98, we got certified. I think we were one of the first companies to get the certification in Brazil. And it has helped us to access different markets, but also to implement a lot of good practices in our forest management plantation, even before you were selling the logs and the products. And ESG principles, being deeply involved in these areas and with commitment for 20 years in these areas, we do have a lot of connection, what we do with the communities and how our teak operations are impacting the communities and the local environment. So, this is just a couple of examples of projects that we help and we promote. One is where we're transitioning on the pruning saws. We are transitioning from combustion pruners to electric pruners with solar panel energy in the farms. It's a very interesting project that our team has put to work with Steel, which is the manufacturer of the pruners. We also work with education, helping the local communities. The Toque de Leta project that we bring consciousness to citizens and the local communities to support the communities. And we really believe that teak is a great opportunity in general to be an alternative. It already is, right? It's already a big reality that plantation teak can be a big source of alleviating the pressure on natural forests, on tropical forests. So we really strongly believe in this mission, and we think everyone should plant it. We've seen, and proved that biodiversity increases. We monitor fauna and flora. We found 166 bird species in our different land. We compare how the benefits of teak plantation with the previous land use that were pasture, degraded pasture. So a part of improving those areas, and now we have over 20,000 hectares of conserved areas within the company properties that if we are not there, they're probably not going to be there. These are natural vegetation that we conserve. And we generate, directly 800 employees in these areas. These are not seasonable workers. They work throughout the year. We give them food and aliment and when they were to work, a lot of benefits with payouts above the market in the regions where we operate, and over 3,000 people indirectly impacted by our operations. So that's it. Thank you again for the opportunity. I'm here for questions. If you all this information and our video, please visit our website at teakrc.com or our social media at teakrc.
Yeah, thank you, Sylvio. Now the floor is open for discussions. You can either post your doubts in the chat box or raise them directly to Sylvio.
Hi, Sylvio. Andrew Callister here. I'll kick off. Thanks for that talk. It was really informative. I've got a few questions, but the first one, and I'll let other people jump in. The first one is about your genetic selection. You mentioned that you select for growth and disease resistance and also wood properties. And I'm curious as to whether you're already at the stage of restricting the clones that you plant based on wood properties. And if so, what is your selection criteria when it comes to wood? What is it you're particularly restricting your clones so that they're improved for? Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. I'll be honest with you. We are more advanced in the growth and disease selection process in terms of identifying the genes and looking at them. In terms of the timber property, we are looking at hardwood formation, the percentage of hardwood formation within the stem. And we are still working on to identify the genes on that. So we have not implemented that in the selection process yet, but we are studying.
Okay. Yeah, we have a question from Mark where he asks, do you think that the increasing international prices for carbon might impact on optimal rotation age? And where you balance continued carbon assimilation with increased value of the standing timber?
Yes, we've got some, it's all about, in the end of the day, we work with institutional and financial investors that are putting their money into it. And they also have very strong ESG principles, but they're looking for financial returns. And when you look to that, holding the teak plantations for more than 22 years is not really viable at this point. So what we are seeing is that the storage that teak is stored in carbon, depending if we can monetize that, that will help us to have an incentive to run plantations for a longer period of time. So we're looking to the different carbon markets and the different methodologies available. And this is one way of going, a part of the afforestation projects that, promoting the plantation of new areas, but also extending rotations that this would prove the additionality that what is needed in the carbon markets. So yes, I think this could play a change. It also could change. Another thing we see that the carbon markets could help. For example, here and in Brazil, and I've seen also in Latin America, the teak areas are suffering a lot of pressure from increasing land prices. So people are planting teak sometimes and they harvest teak and they're planting bananas or they're planting soybeans or they're planting other crops that produce faster term returns. So if we can really calculate how much carbon teak is holding and not only on the surface, but on the soil and proving that, maybe running a second rotation of teak would keep storing more carbon than alternative land uses. This would also help to at least to maintain the teak area in Latin America. I can tell you that the teak area in Latin America has expanded over the years, but is reducing going forward because the planting pace is not the same as before.
Yeah, then we have a question from Daniel. What will be the average of, I think it will be CDM per hectare at the end of 20 years? And also if you have any premium price for sustainability certificate.
The productivity that we expect in the end of the year, again, with such a large area, we have different productivities. So I give you the average. We have areas that are growing, we are harvesting 50 cubic meters per hectare. We are areas that we are harvesting 150 cubic meters per area. So commercial production. So, it can be 3 times more depending on the performance of the plantation. So this is what we're getting now. And yes, we are getting premiums for I wouldn't say premium, but we are getting access to markets that are looking for that. And eventually that would come at a premium. So yes, we could say that, yes. But this also depends not only for, if you have 7-year-old thinning teak, you can have certification, you're not going to get a premium because there's no quality on the timber. So the certification comes at a premium, but you need also to have a more quality product to achieve the quality markets.
Okay. Then we have another question on by O. My question is, how does TRC manage impact from social issues to get the FSC certificate?
Yeah, this is, as I told, this is very important for us. The thing is that the areas that we operate, they are very, very low density of population. There's not really pressure for land securement. And despite our area being large for teak standards, if you look in the regions where you operate, we are still small. If you look to the size of other farms, cattle farms, soybean crop, or other annual crops, our farms are really not that big. And we work with long-term with our employees. They work for us. We provide them good working conditions. We pay them salaries that are equal or above the average of the market. We a lot of support. So I must tell you that we are really well seen in the communities that we operate. We really not have any conflicts or crisis with that.
Okay, then we have a question from Nelly. So can you throw more light on the chemical composition of the best performing soils? Which elements must be in the soil and in what proportion?
Yeah, we are actually not looking really to the chemical of the soil right now. We look more to the physical property of the soil. And then we try to, if the soil has a good physical property, that the roots can develop, there's no water drainage issues, there's no rocks impeding the growth of the roots, we can fix that with different chemicals. We use a P, calcium, it's a whole different set of elements that we use. But what we do, we take a lot of care with the physical analysis, and then we look to the chemical analysis to fix it.
Yeah, so there is a connected question which is from Andrew. So do you have much need for trace elements, that is micronutrients, fertilization, or is it mostly the nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium?
It's mainly NPK. And then what we notice is that once those elements are the tick is well developing with those elements, they will start looking for something else. Something else is going to start missing. So, maybe boron, maybe magnesium. So there's really not what we learn. We're still learning, right? This is a learning process. We don't know everything yet, but and I think we'll never know. Tick is you really have to, it's a watch and see game. So we tried a lot of things, some are working, and then we see some nutrients are getting unbalanced, then we fix with something else. But usually the basis is NPK, and the micronutrients would come on a second step, depending on what is missing.
Okay. Okay. Then we have a question from Montejo where he asks, I guess rainfall is higher in Para than in Mato Grosso. So is there any yield or qualitatively noticeable difference between the two sites?
No. Yeah, there's more rainfall, there's more light, The photo period is higher in Pará because of the closer to the equator line, but we are not noticing any difference in the wood quality so far.
Okay, so Mark has asked a question which is connected to the earlier on chemical composition and all. What about soil pH?
Yeah, usually 5.5 to 6 we look at, but as I told you, this is not really the main driver that we look at when we select soils, not pH. I mean, we of course we like more neutral soils, but it's not the what would tell us not to do some transaction because of pH.
Yeah. So there is another query from Nelly. What is the justification for embarking on the first pruning, that is in less than 1 year old teak? And what is the permissible no-teak core for your teak? To what diameter are you pruning?
So as we try to prune 50% of the total height throughout the rotation. To do not over prune and take out the leaf area of too much of leaf area, and we prune up to 10 meters high. So let's say 20 meter tree high, total height. We prune up to 10. More than that is not operational feasible in our calculations. So that's the general rule that we follow.
Okay. So, yeah, then from Monday we have another question. What respective proportions of seedlings and clones in your plantations, and what will be your priority in the coming years? Seedling or clone?
No, we plant right now. And also for a few years already, we plant 100% clone material. We don't plant seeds anymore. Material from seeds.
Okay, then from Doreen, how much value can TRC actually get from having FSC?
Yeah, we get, as I hi Doreen, we get a lot of we're getting from the final harvest material. We are getting access to markets that we would not get, and that comes at a premium. How much that, it's hard to say, but because depends on the market, but you can say $30 to $50 per cubic meter, maybe. That's what you would get on an average for the final harvest material, but this is also limited markets. It's not that all your production you'll be able to sell there. So you need to do your weighted average calculation. So I don't have those details here, but there's a lot of value also from the forest management angle. Depending on the certification company that you work with, for us, it helps us to standardize the operations itself. It forces you to have a higher level of governance. So it's not only really the premium that you get in the timber, but I think there's a lot of value to the operations.
Yeah, so from Rafael, we have a question. Do you have experience in mixed plantation? For example, corn with teak.
No.
Looking cash flow for the long cycle of teak.
No.
Like
no,
producers in Ecuador can do it.
No, we don't have experience.
Don't, okay. So Monte, you have another question. How many clones are deployed?
Right now, we have a long list of clones, but right now we are working with 5 commercial clones, but on a research level, we have more than 15.
Okay. So yeah, Daniel, how much is the teak consumption in Brazil? Yeah. How much is the teak consumption in Brazil? That is a question from Daniel.
It's very small. It's not enough to absorb the Brazilian production. So has increased though over the years, but it's not enough. So we have to export it. Okay.
So from Andrew, we have another question. can you please comment on the importance of the veneer market for teak? Do you think this segment will increase in importance?
Yes, we think this will increase, especially for the best grade logs. We think there's a big space for teak plantation there.
Okay. So Montejo has another question, which is, I think, connected to his earlier questions on clones, whether they have been planted in monoclonal blocks or in mixture.
Monoclonal blocks. So each stand, it's one genetic material. We don't mix a genetic material within the same stand, but we have stands with different genetic material.
Okay. And from Nelly, then there's a question on what is the average number of logs per tree and what is the average log length?
So we're getting the best areas. We can get commercial logs with 12 to 12 meters height of commercial. So that's the longest we can get, but you know, not all buyers want that length. So if you're looking for the furniture market, they prefer shorter lengths. So we optimize that length depending on the market. So we cut from 2.3 meters. We supply logs from 2.3 meters up to 11.8 meters, which is what you fit in the 40 feet container. So depends on how your market, your customers are, what they're looking at.
Okay. And how much volume per hectare from 150 to 180 trees per hectare? That is also.
Yeah, this is what I told, is from 50 to 150 cubic meters per hectare. That's what we are harvesting now.
Okay.
Depending on the site.
Yeah. And what chemical do you use for weeding? Montejo as raised.
The main one is glyphosate.
Then few questions from our side. What is the minimum girth that you consider good in the first few years?
Can you repeat it, please?
What is the minimum girth that you expect in your plantations to consider that it is a very good plantation, that it is going to have a good growth?
In the final harvest,
we first few years, first, second or third year, what is the growth that you are looking for in your plantations?
Okay, we look, so in girth, we usually calculate in diameters. We look at 2 to 3 centimeters in diameter per year. I guess that would be 6 to 9, right? Let's say 8 in girth per year. That's usually what we target.
Then, in your hybridization programs, have you come up with any successful hybrids?
No,
not. And one question that would be interesting to all our teak stakeholders: how you feel the market during the COVID pandemic?
Was very difficult, right? I mean, we struggled a lot because there were lockdowns in the market, and there's a lot of uncertainty how the demand will play. We're confident the market right now, for example, is undersupplied, but you know, we know there is supply in the market, and it's at any time that supply can come back very quickly. So in a very short-term answer, looking at the market on a short term, we think it's going to be extremely volatile as it has been over the last 2 years. And on a more long term, we keep bullishing. We're very bullish on the teak market. We believe on it. We keep investing, we keep planting. We think, the area in the world, in our view, is decreasing, and I think it's a good time to plant teak.
Okay. And from Montayu, one more question is there. What made you widening the spacing?
Oh, it's basically, as I told you, if you're going to harvest 150 trees per hectare or 100, why do you need to plant more? You have extra cost with seedlings, you have extra cost of pruning. You may have extra cost of weeding because they're not closed, the canopies, but it's just from a, risk return point of view. We think, you're going to have less to worry with thinning, and less to worry with pruning, and less spending on seedlings if you plant less trees.
I guess this is due to the use of clones, not seedlings.
No, of course. This is, I'm assuming you're using clones, right? I mean, if you're not using clones, you cannot afford to have such an aggressive spacing. Clones and a good forest management also, because things can go wrong even with the best genetics, things can go wrong. So I think it's a combination of the two that makes you more confident to plant less trees per hectare. In the end, is about risk management.
What makes me wondering about the loss in terms of thinning, because you will thin less, and also I was concerned about weeding, because the wider it is, the more weeds.
Yes, so if you open more, there's more weeds. That's for sure. So that's
I was expecting you to have some income from thinning. So, but apparently, it's not worse.
Yeah, I mean, you have some income from thinning, but the growth that you gain from the final crop trees, not having competition, is more than you have the income from the thinnings in our conditions.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, Sylvio, so I think we have reached the end of the discussion session. Thank you for the motivating talk, encompassing all aspects of teak cultivation, from site selection up to teak trade. And it has been very assuring, especially in these days of COVID-19 related pandemic and ensuing disruptions, to hear that the industry of teak remains intact. So that has been really encouraging. And